Everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Influence Economy. I'm your host, Shayna Davis. I'm so glad that you're here. But before we get started, I would love if you would do me a favor. So, wherever it is that you are listening to this episode, I want you to take a screenshot. And I want you to take that screenshot. I want you to post it on your LinkedIn and I want you to tag us here at Shayna Rattler Davis. And the reason why I do that is that I just believe that far too many people don't really know how to exhibit, cultivate, and build their external influence. And the more times that these episodes are shared, the more people that will be exposed to the shifts that are going to be required in order to do so. So, thank you for advance in being willing to do that. So, I want to get started with this solo episode today. And I just want to start by saying you can't afford to ignore this anymore. If your tech company just received a Series B, first of all, congratulations, because you have proven market fit, the investors believe in your potential, and now you've got about 2 years to prove that you're worth Series C, right? Like there's going to be certain milestones that you have to meet within that 2 years in order for you to really effectively be able to secure the amount of Series C funding and beyond that you want to receive. So, what's happening right now? You're moving fast, you're scaling, you're hiring like crazy, you're refining product, you're focused on building something great. But let me ask you something that most founders aren't thinking about. While you're building the tech, who's building the trust? Because what I've seen over and over again with Series B companies is that they think that the job is just to execute internally and let the results speak for themselves. Let the product or service that they're building speak for themselves. But this isn't stealth mode anymore. You're not just a scrappy team with potential. You have to start seeing yourself as a company that people are watching because they are watching. And how your leadership team shows up externally right now, it matters more than you think. So let's get into it. We're living in an era where perception drives performance. The outside perception of your company is what is going to drive performance in so many ways. And companies that win the AI war, that win that race in the AI war, in the talent war, in the trust war, they're the ones who know how to, what I call, lead out loud. Not just build a killer product, not just meet milestones, but become known, trusted, and visible in ways that strategically move the business forward. And for Series B companies specifically, this is the most overlooked part of your strategy, what I call external influence. So let me break this down. At Series B, your goal is accelerated growth, right? You're formalizing teams, you're building structure, you're turning scrappy execution into scalable systems. But visibility is no longer a luxury, right? Like you can't afford not to focus on visibility. It's a business imperative. Being able to have strong external visibility is actually a business imperative. But here's the gap that I keep seeing over and over again is that founders are focused on scaling the company. Product and engineering teams are focused on improving the product. Product marketing and revenue teams are focused on the go to market strategy. Investors are focused on the milestones, and no one, most of the time, is focused on strengthening how the leadership team shows up in the outside world. And that is a massive liability because perception drives funding. Perception drives hiring. Perception drives sales. Perception drives what media says about you and your company. And when I say external influence, I'm talking about how your leadership team is perceived by people who don't work for you, but whose decisions impact your success, like investors, clients, potential hires, media, partners. These people are forming opinions about your company based on how your leaders show up online, on stage, in the press, on podcasts, and even in casual LinkedIn comments. I see a lot of missteps. So let's talk about the typical Series B leadership team. Here's what I see. I see a visionary founder who probably has made, they probably have some decent media chops. sometimes. They maybe do a podcast here or there. They can command a stage. They can post on LinkedIn now and then. And honestly, many of you aren't even strong in that area as you are like leading your teams and generating great ideas, because oftentimes, just like in any other area of business, we go into business because we're good at what we do, not necessarily because we're good at running a company, not because we're necessarily good at external engagement, right? But the rest of the executive team, like even if you as the founder do well in engaging externally, the rest of your executive team, silent, invisible, unknown. And I get it because most of them are heads down operators. Your CTO, brilliant technologist. Your head of engineering, fantastic team leader. But you don't hire them for their external presence. You hire them to build. But here's the problem with that is that you can't afford for them to stay invisible. It is a requirement most of the time these days because in the next chapter of growth, every single leader on your team becomes an ambassador of your brand, whether you want them to or not. They're now part of the perception machine. More and more, they're required to engage with external stakeholders, to speak about how what you're building, to speak about how what you're building solves problems. And too often, they are not skilled in this area. They're great coders, they're great at leading the product teams, they're great thinkers, they're great doers, but they're not great at engaging with external stakeholders. And oftentimes these days, they need to do so. And if you leave that machine running without strategy, that's where the cracks start to show. So let me give you a real example. I worked with a Series B company last year and they were scaling quickly. They were gearing up for their Series C. They had strong metrics, they had a great product, they had momentum in their market. They even had interest from a Wall Street institution to purchase them before they launched while they were still in stealth mode. But when the CTO and the VP of engineering were told that they have to start talking externally about how the product worked and the problems that it was solving, they were shocked, scared even, trying to pass the buck to the marketing team. So they had equity, they had runway, they had vision, they had tech competency. But what they didn't have was visible leadership. Now, they had leaders that were getting ready to be forced to be visible, but they weren't prepared to do so well. The CTO, he had never spoken publicly. The company didn't talk about their engineering culture. There were no breadcrumbs online to signal what it felt like to be part of that team. And meanwhile, what was happening was their competitor was flooding LinkedIn with behind the scenes content, engineering deep dives, thought leadership from their tech leads. They were speaking at events, guesting on podcasts, getting quoted in the trades, and not just the founder, the entire leadership team. And guess where all the top 1% talent wanted to go? Not the company with the better comp package, the company with the stronger signals. That's where they wanted to go. Because in tech, especially now, people don't just join companies, they follow leaders. And if your leaders are invisible, or if they're visible and they're not good at external influence, you're making it easier for your competitors to poach your best people and your best prospects. This goes beyond talent. It also affects fundraising, partnerships, enterprise deals. When potential investors or enterprise clients, when they're evaluating you, they're not just looking at your pitch deck or your demo of your product. They're googling your leadership team, they're checking LinkedIn, they're reading interviews, they're looking for signals. And when what they find is nothing, or what they find is poorly communicated, or worse, outdated bios, generic statements, photos that look like they've been taken in the backyard, that undermines your credibility. So you have 2 years to prove that you can make the leap to Series C. Just show investors that their money is safe with you. And the companies that make it are the ones that don't just build better, they lead better. It's no longer just about the tech. It's no longer just about the innovative ideas. You are going to be required to lead differently. This is something that you have to take seriously. So, what does leading better actually look like at this stage? It means equipping your entire executive team, not just the founder, to communicate with clarity, confidence, and credibility externally. Your CTO needs to be able to explain technical roadmaps in a way that excites partners and reassures investors in clear, easy to understand terms, not tech jargon. Your head of product needs to articulate vision in ways that attract the best UX talent. Your COO needs to speak with conviction and operational excellence and scale. Now, this is not about turning your operators into influencers. When I'm talking about influence, I'm not talking about influencers. But what it is about making sure that they don't tank your perception by staying silent or sounding scattered when they're not silent. They need to be able to talk to the press, hold their own on stage, write a LinkedIn post that doesn't read like a robot wrote it. They need to be able to demonstrate a clear POV beyond what is on the company website. It's about making your leadership team match the caliber of the company that you say you're building. So here's the bottom line. Series B is where companies start to separate themselves. Some rise to the occasion and become category leaders. Others, they stay in their silo, hope that the product speaks for themselves, and get outpaced by louder, sharper, more strategic competitors. So you have a choice to make. Are you going to lead like it's still 2019? Or are you going to recognize that in this new era of tech, trust, and talent, that all of that stuff, trust is earned publicly, not just what you can do inside, not just about the product, because you already know how to build a world class product. So let's make sure that your leadership knows how to show up like a world class company. And if you want to learn how I can help your team build this external influence that drives real business outcomes, just send me a message on LinkedIn. Let's talk about what your leadership team needs in order to thrive in this next chapter. Don't just wait until Series C to figure this out, because the clock is already ticking. So I hope that you have enjoyed this episode, that you will share it, and that you will go back and listen to previous and future episodes as well. Have a great day. Bye bye.